Okay, it's good to see everybody. Well, some old crowd,
Wait,
old faces, new
you
faces.
never came to the cloud?
Uh, is there still space in the cloud? I don't know. Sometimes it always tells me it's full, so I never.
Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's full. I don't think it's gonna work. So I put
Heard.
I put it on
Yeah,
my
that's
computer and then I'll upload it in 8 months, whatever.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. We got Rebecca, Hannah, Roberto. Very good. It's good to see everybody. Let's just get right into it because I don't have much time. Okay, this is Parshas Toldos. I'm gonna skip over Rambam. Rambam's talking about in Perek Echad. You shouldn't read the Megillah backwards. Yeah, you shouldn't read it out of order. Chassidic, when you read the Megillah, you have to read it in its sequence. The Baal Shem Tov has a saying that what does it mean you shouldn't read it backwards? I mean, you shouldn't read it as if it was an event that happened in the past. But the idea of Hanukkah, which is coming up in 25 days, and the idea of, the energy of Purim, it's happening right now. It actually reoccurs every year, and it's happening right now. All of time and all of creation is actually all here right now at this time, and you can tap into it. There's certain days where it's, so to speak, more transparent, and you can access it more easily. Like the energy of Purim can be accessed best on Purim, but you can also access it now. So that applies to it's obviously a general rule about how time works. I actually learned today that Hashem gives us the Torah every single day because we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hanoisen HaTorah, the one who gives the Torah. What do you mean? You should have said it the one Hanasan HaTorah, who gave the Torah. No, it says Hanoisen HaTorah, that Hashem is giving us the Torah every single day. That applies to everything. Everything is occurring every single day, at every moment. So you can tap into anything. It's never too late. That's why tshuva can happen at any time. Okay, let's go right into the parsha. Parsha's told us. Parshas told us this is all about Yaakov and Esav. We're going to dedicate a lot of psukim. Yaakov is going to be with us for the rest of till the end of the Chumash of Bereshis, the book of Bereshis, Genesis, because Yaakov's life is very. We can glean a lot of ideas and applicable. The way a lot of things that happen in his life happens in our lives to a greater or lesser degree. So Yaakov and Esav were born. So first, it talks about Rivka being. She thought she was. First of all, she didn't have a child for 20 years. She didn't have a child, so she goes to her husband Yitzchak. Can you pray on our behalf? Rashi says they both went to go pray to God to have a child, and they went to separate corners of the room to pray. This is one of the earliest, if not the earliest, place where we see that when you pray, you should have men and women should be on separate sides. And the reason, a very practical reason for that is, men get very distracted if they're by women. So it's much more appropriate. It's a time to focus on God, and So and women too. You should focus on God, and people tend to be a little bit more self-reflect. What's the word I'm talking? They're like they think about themselves a little bit much. They're self-conscious. Yeah. The best weddings are the weddings where the women and the men are separate, because the women go all out dancing, the men go all out dancing. But if they're like mixed together, you'll see that people are like a little bit more self-conscious, and it's not as much. It doesn't open you up as much. So you got to be open. Open lets you have a channel for blessings. So they got to be open. Anyway, so they go in the corner over there and they daven, and lo and behold, she gets pregnant. Now her pregnancy is so difficult. She's in so much pain. She actually wishes that she wasn't pregnant. That's to the level. I mean, for 20 years she wanted to be pregnant. I don't know, for 20 for maybe 15 years. But it was so painful that she didn't want it. She actually was about to pray to God to end it, but it didn't happen. Anytime she'd walk past a place of idol worship, her stomach started kicking. Anytime she walked past a shul or a yeshiva, her stomach started kicking. She thought she had a schizophrenic. She did. She went to go to Aver. Aver is the grandson of Noah, who had a yeshiva. And she goes to the yeshiva, and Rashi brings this down, and she asks him, "What's going on with me?" And he says, "Actually, I can tell you have two children. You have two children in your stomach. They're twins, and one has a proclivity towards good. One has a proclivity towards the not good. Both will become great nations, but only one They can never be on top at the same time. Whenever one's on top, the other one will be down, and when the other one's down, the other one will be on top. This will eventually be the Romans. Edom. Esav is the father of Edom, which are the Romans, and we still have from Roman society today. It's the Greeks and then the Romans. Roman society is pretty much our society, Western culture. So she has the child. Esav comes out first. Yaakov is holding on to the heel. Called him Esav because he looked very hairy. And Yaakov, because it comes from the word Akev, which means heel. He was holding on to the heel, which means that Esav will never be Yaakov will never lose total control of Esav. Esav will never be so far ahead that he will have to that he'll never lose grip. Yeah, he'll always have a grip. Just had a very salty soup, and my blood pressure is a little bit high, so I just have to I get a little bit woo. Okay, so the nations will be great. The question is, and this was my Instagram question yesterday, is somebody born evil? And the answer is no. They have a proclivity towards evil, but you can not act upon it. You can change the way you act and feel. Somebody could also be born righteous. Well, not righteous, but very much into learning Torah and studying and doing godly things. But the Alter Rebbe comes down hard on that person. It doesn't come down hard, but he says, it doesn't mean just because you naturally want to serve God, it doesn't mean you are serving God. You have to put in effort. If it's very natural for you to want to serve God, but you're not really exerting effort into it, it's called someone who doesn't serve God. It's just you're doing mitzvahs, but you're not a servant of God, and the idea is to be a servant of God. So that's so anybody who naturally wants to serve God, you have a way to knock him down a little bit. Just kidding, we should do that. Okay, I'm just looking through the parsha. So Esav comes from an extremely high level. So those of you that study Chassidus know about Makif and Panimi. The example that I personally like to say is a Makif. What Makif means surrounding. The idea of Makif is you have people who talk to you. Yeah, when you're talking with someone, you can tell that they're talking to you and they're listening to you, they're involved with you. And then you have people who just talk at you. Now, the people who talk at you are usually larger than life personalities. Not always, but they usually have very large personalities. The problem is they might not affect as many people as they can affect a lot greater number of people, but it doesn't have the same quality as someone who can spend a lot of time with you personally. Now, that guy who can spend a lot of time personally, a panimi, might not be able to affect a lot of people. What Yaakov loved to hang around his son Esav, and the reason is he saw that he came from this level of makif, this more transcendent part of God. And he was trying to curb it, and it was a lot easier. He thought it would be easier for him to try to curb it and make him a panimi person, and then he'd be a super powerhouse because he'd have this great, huge personality, and he would be able to focus on a person or a situation and bring tremendous energy, harness that makif energy into something in particular, and it would be a complete powerhouse. Problem is, it wasn't ready. And that's why ultimately Jacob is going to steal the blessings from Esav. And the truth is, Jacob, Rashi brings down that Jacob really knew that the blessings were being stolen. The great qualities, it says about Esav that the trappings were in his mouth. He had trappings in his mouth. So Rashi says that it was deer meat. He liked venison. I don't know. I've had venison. It's okay. I think the hamburger is still superior. But another explanation according to Chassidus is that the godly energy was trapped within him, and therefore it couldn't be released. But it will be released with time. Yaakov was trying to speed up. Another explanation is that Yaakov was trying to speed up that time when he would be able to release that makif energy to have an effect upon the world. But he couldn't do it. Rivka saw that. When did it come to be expressed? Who knows which of the sages come from Esav? Anybody know? Which one of our great sages?
Is it Rabbi Huda Nasi?
No, not Rabbi Yonasi. Good guess though. Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva comes from him. Unkelis comes from him. Shmaya and Naftalion. Shmaya and Naftalion are the two people who commissioned the writing of the Talmud. They also come from, they're all converts. Rabbi Akiva comes from converts. Uncles comes from converts. Shmaya and Naftalion come from converts. Who else? Whatever. The architects of the oral tradition, basically, except for Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, come from, maybe Rabbi Yunus does, but I didn't see that. But the great architects of the Jewish people come from him, come from Esau. So it came into fruition. Yeah, what was that?
That was a wild guess. Don't listen to me.
No, I don't know. You might be right. I just don't know yet. That was a good guess. So, Yitzchak, yeah. So the truth is, Rashi explains that Yitzchak wasn't really duped into loving Esav more than. I'm sorry, Yitzchak. I keep saying Yaakov. Yitzchak wasn't really duped into loving Esav more than Yaakov, but he was just trying to speed up this process over here. Let's see over here. Another word for makif sometimes is tohu. So you guys ever heard of tohu? Tikkun and tohu. Tohu is pure energy. So he comes from the word tohu. The story of the Rebbe Rashab, fifth Chabad Rebbe. It wasn't the Rebbe Rashab. It was the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe. The fourth Chabad Rebbe, the guy was amazing. First of all, he spoke fluent French. Very interesting because he lived in Lubavitch in Belarus, but he was fluent in French. He was extremely wealthy. You know how he was extremely wealthy? He played the stock market in Russia. St. Petersburg had a stock market, and every single day he would write to his Hasidim that lived there what to buy. Now, it took days for that telegram to arrive, and the information about stocks didn't reach Lubavitch. He had no way of knowing which stocks to buy. So he used clairvoyancy. If they would go ahead and buy a stock, even if it was successful, but it wasn't mentioned by the Reb Maharash, he wouldn't use the proceeds. He would tell them to use the money for like horses or whatever, to feed the horses, something like that. Okay, very interesting. It was very interesting. Anyway, but he spoke French. One day, it's a very famous story. One day he told his secretaries, we're going to Paris. And okay, so they got a coach bus and they traveled to Paris. I don't know how long that took. Probably took months maybe. They arrive in Paris and he says, I want to stay at the most expensive hotel, whatever the most expensive hotel at the time was. They got a room. I want to get an expensive room. And they walked in there and the Chassidim described what they saw. They were like, he went with two Chassidim. They said, what we saw going on in the ballroom, they went into a bar. He goes, I want to go to the bar. The bar had a ballroom in it, or the ballroom had a bar in it. He's like, that's where we're going. We're going in there first. He said, we were so disgusted at what we saw. I think like Paris at the time was like, you could do whatever you want in the streets, but in the ballroom, no problem. He said, I think one of the guys said he vomited and he couldn't stand being in the, people were acting so debased and like disgusting that he had to leave. And the other chassid said, I couldn't stand either, and they left. Or maybe one of them stayed, and he stayed by the corner. You can read it. It's very interesting. He said the Reb Maharash didn't seem fazed. He walked right up to the bar. And there was a man sitting there, impeccably dressed to the T's. And he said to the man, this is all he said. He said, young man, yayin nesech metamtem es alev. He said, young man, non-kosher wine stuffs up the heart. It makes the heart unable to sense godliness. And that was it. And he turned around and he told the guys, okay, we're going back to our room. It said that he went into the elevator. I don't know why this detail was so important, but it seems to be something important. He went into the elevator, and in the elevator there were elevator operators, and you could sit on a bench. And I don't know, he sat on the bench and he told the man, go to the, whichever floor he's on. Turns out, okay, what happened? Like a year later, that was it. That was basically the story. I think the young man came and spoke to the Maharash briefly, like in his room for something, but nobody knew what was said. A year later, this guy came and he became this, obviously, like all stories, how they end. He became a tremendous chassid. Like tremendous. I'm not exactly sure where he went or what. So they explain that this person, he didn't even recognize this person that he saw was a Jew, obviously, but he was so far it could be that he never even grew up frum or religious or anything like that, but his soul came from such a high level that it fell so low. We know the idea that the lower something is in this physical world, that means it's rooted in something much higher. That's why Chassidus explains. They ask a question in Chassidus, a very famous question, and Kabbalah brings it down. How can a human be sustained by a plant? A human seemingly would need. Normally, when you want to eat something to give you energy, you have to have something that has more energy than you. You should be able to, really, like, I guess animals should eat. Plants should eat animals in order to grow, but they eat minerals, or they consume minerals and whatever they consume. The way it works is you eat something that's a lower species than you in the Torah species. So how can we be sustained by plants? And the answer is because plants are really rooted. You're right. When they come into this world, they can't speak, and they don't grow like we grow, and they're not sophisticated like we are sophisticated. But the truth is that it shows that they're rooted in something much higher. They're rooted deeper within God. And because the higher something is, the farther down it falls. The classic example it's given is a wall. If a wall falls over, the stones that were on the top of the wall are going to fall furthest away from the original place it was, as opposed to the stones at the bottom of the wall. If the wall topples over, they're basically going to stay close to where they were before. They're not going to fall so far away. So something, the higher something is, the rooted something higher, the higher something is rooted, the further away it'll fall. Okay. Why am I getting to this? Oh, this Yid, he had fallen into something. So the Rebbe Marash saw from Lubavitch, the town of Lubavitch, this neshama had fallen so low. It must have been that he was rooted so high, and the Rebbe Marash had to go schlep him out. It's a famous story. What's the lesson for us? It was a very practical lesson. I'm sure there's many lessons. Every story has many lessons. You never know who you're talking to. You never know who you're dealing with. You got to treat everybody with respect, and if they look lower than you, they're probably rooted much higher. They probably have greater capabilities than you do. Okay. Let's go over here. Esav comes after a day of killing. He liked to kill animals in an inhumane way. He was like a real psycho. He was very tired. It says when a person, if they kill somebody, or they're involved in killing, they get very hungry, which is very interesting. Let me tell you something, kind of a weird story. One time I was doing podcasts, and I would interview. I want to start interviewing like gang members of Detroit. So one of the guys I interviewed, I asked him. He goes, I'll tell you the first time I ever saw someone get killed right in front of me. He goes, when they got killed, he told me this whole story, and it was wild. He goes, what's something weird? When I saw the person dead in front of me, I didn't kill them. Somebody else. It was a gang. He was part of a gang, and the other gang shot him. He was standing right in front of him. He goes, I immediately became hungry. I remember it. He goes, I don't know why. I immediately became hungry. Then the cops came, and he was explaining what was going on, and he asked the cop. He said it was a woman cop, and he goes, well, I don't know why. Why did I immediately become starving when I saw this person, my friend, laying in front of me? And she said, every time I see a dead body, I get hungry. Like I don't know. Just kind of a weird thing. Well, here it's rooted. Obviously, clearly it's here. Esav came from killing a bunch of animals inhumanely, and he was starving, and he thought he was going to die. He was so hungry. So Jacob said, he made him lentils, whatever. Jacob said, I'll give you my soup if you sell me your birthright. And really, the birthright should have belonged to Jacob. Why? How does that work? So Rashi explains, Esav came out first. He's like, okay, they're twins, 2 seconds apart, a second apart. But Rashi explains that when it comes to twins, the first one out came from the first drop of semen, and the first drop of the conception. And so therefore, really, Esav came. I'm sorry. The last one out is rooted in the first drop, and then he gets pushed behind because there's going to be new babies coming along the way. So really, Jacob was conceived first, and therefore he's considered the firstborn. That's how it goes. Anyway, so he sells him his birthright, which just shows Jacob sells him his birthright, which means he'll be the one that inherits the land of Israel, and et cetera, and get all of the special goodies that comes with being the son of Abraham. And it just showed a certain insensitivity that Esav had. Esav is obviously going to regret it at some point, but that's what ended up happening. Let me just go down over here. Okay. It gets into a bunch of wells. What's all this well digging about? So the wells, the way I like to explain, the way that's explained in Chassidus, because I'm a Chabad Chassid, I'm biased, is that wells represent changing the changes below in this physical world. How to make real change. These wells, there were wells that were digging by Abraham, Yitzchak's father. But those wells, Rashi explains, were plugged back up by the Plishtim. Then it says that Yitzchak came and he redug all those wells, and then they stayed as wells. So Chassidus explains that Abraham represents inspiration, the initial inspiration. And the problem, as you know, I say it all the time, the problem with inspiration is it doesn't actually change you. It suspends who you are and what you're feeling for the moment, but it doesn't actually change you. Yeah, it's just an override of the system. But real change comes from within. Real change comes from you working on yourself. Reminds me of a joke. Should I tell you a joke really quick? I think I told it already. The Dalai Lama comes to the United States, and he orders. He goes to a hot dog vending machine. He always wanted a hot dog vending machine. I'm not really sure they eat meat, but okay. Okay, now it was a monk. A monk comes and he goes to a hot dog vending machine, and the vendor gives him the hot dog. The monk gives him $20, and the vendor takes $20, puts it in his drawer, closes the drawer, and says thank you to the monk. The monk says, "What about my change?" And the vendor said, "Change must come from within." Real change happens from your own effort. So Yitzchak represents working on your oneself. Yeah, you got to put in effort when you're not inspired. That's how it's going to last. That's how everything really sits. That's how Torah is really going to become part of you. Not in moments of inspiration. Moments of perspiration. Okay. Ooh.
A ganzen Wort, Rabbi. Sheesh.
It's not my joke. Schneer, by the way, has the best jokes. You should always tell Rabbi Schneer to open up with a joke. I don't know if he does. Let's see over here. Nah, it's okay. I don't really talk about that. Esav got married at 40. He got married at 40 because Yaakov got married at 40. But he marries pagan wives, and there was always this lack of tranquility in the home. You got to be on the same page. You got to be on the same page with your spouse about what you want in life. It's not enough just a pretty face. Got to be on the same page.
I have a question about that. So, like, if Asa wanted to be OTD so bad, like, what's the big deal?
OTD? Off the derech? Oh, what do you mean? Nobody wants to see their, if you see somebody that's acting, like if you believe in something, OTD means you're off the derech. Like, your child, you want your child, if you really believe something is good and good for them, it hurts you to think that they're going like so far away from that. Like they're doing something he was self-harming himself.
Oh, I meant what was the issue for Asaph? Like, wouldn't a non-Jewish woman be like the right exact match for him?
No. He was like, he was, in a way, he was born a Jew to a certain extent. It didn't really like stick with him. That spirit, that Jewish energy or whatnot was within him, but it was trapped within him. It came out much later with the architects of it took 200,000 years later for it to come out, but it was trapped. And so you have to be with somebody who's the right type of person for you. He didn't pick the right kind of people. He was just going after pretty faces and money and all the wrong. Yeah, I was marrying you for all the wrong reasons, and that's essentially what was happening. And so there was all like lack of tranquility. No, he had within him the ability to be the firstborn son and do everything right and be the true heir to Yitzchak and to Abraham. He just didn't know how. He couldn't get himself out of the way. Yitzchak is 124 years old, Rashi says, and why he wanted to bless his children. Why did he do that at 124? Because he sensed that his mother passed away at 127. It says a person becomes, when they get close to the age of their parents, when they passed, they do some serious self-reflection. They think that their end is coming near. So obviously he continued to live for many more years, but he asked Esav to go shechtem an animal and make him food so that he would have Yeah, good food helps you think clearly. And he wanted to give Esav blessings that he thought would really be able to drive home the really extract the inner energy that he had, the makif tohu that he really was, and use it out for good. He was trying to like prepare himself the best he can, and he asked Esav to shech an animal, slaughter an animal for him. The question is, how could he ask Esav to slaughter an animal? Esav wasn't a religious Jew. So there's actually a concept in halacha that you got to be very careful with. The rabbi mentions it, so I feel like it's okay, and he's a big rab. You can rely on someone, a Jewish person, cooking for you, even though they themselves don't keep kosher, if you know that they won't do anything wrong for you. Like if you know that they're not going to try to like trick you in any way. However, the caveat of that is they have to be knowledgeable. A lot of people have a lot of good intentions and they're trying to do their best, but they don't have enough knowledge. And so you can't just eat anybody's food. Even though they're sweet and they're great and they tried hard and they worked hard, they have to know. It's not just enough to like actually do it. You have to know what to do. So that's like that's why they say when you leave yeshiva, the best thing to learn is halacha. You should learn a lot of Jewish law. It's very important to know a lot of Jewish law. Probably more important than anything else. Okay. So Rivka finds out that he's trying to steal the blessings, and these blessings are going to be a blessing, like we've explained many times. A bracha is to draw down spiritual energy. It was going to get wasted in Esav, so Rivka said, Yaakov, let's trick your father, and you're going to take it. Now, we learned that Yitzchak really knew. Rashi explains that Yitzchak really knew. But so why through the trickery, all this trickery? So the Torah was trying to teach us that sometimes to battle with the animal soul, a nefesh Baham is an animal soul, don't go straight on. It's not always good to just tell somebody off in their face. In fact, it's probably not going to work. You have to do like roundabout, bait and switches. Yeah, the old bait and switch. Come to Chabad house, we have good food, and then we're going to make you religious. No, but that's basically what it is. Like, you come and I'll take care of your animal soul. I'm going to trick you. Let's get your animal soul out of the way. And that's why Chabad for Brangans, very often there'll be good food and there'll be a lot of l'chaim, because it gets the animal soul. The animal soul just wants to feel good. Okay, I'll give you some candy to feel good right away, and then you'll be able to listen. So you have to
give the kids a bunch of cookies by Shalshudas so they, go away.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes, we do the same thing. Okay, we say something over here. Jacob gives some incredible. Isaac gives some incredible blessings. That he gives them a gift that will keep on giving. To say it short, in other words, the blessings that he was giving were blessings that were going to be continuous. Ve'yiten lacha, and he will give, meaning God will give. It should have said. It should just say God will give you such and such a thing. It says, and God, he starts the blessing, and God will give you such and such a thing. What do you mean and? And means you were saying something beforehand. It says, if you say, Rabbi Eli, give me a blessing, and you should grow up to be fantastic, and you should grow up to have a lot of money. What do you mean and? You didn't. What was the first thing you said? I started with the word and. The word and means it's going to be continuous. If I started with and, it means it's going to be continuous. God is continuously giving us blessings. And Chassidus explains that the way blessings work are you have all the blessings, but it's like a vending machine where the thing gets stuck a little bit. You got to give a shake. You got to make yourself a keli. You got to give a little effort, and then eventually the potato chips will fall. Okay, I need to stop right here. I apologize for making it a little shorter. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Hey, Rebecca, good to see you. Rivka, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I got to go.
Thank you.
Ask me if you have any questions.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.